Of course, before we get started, we'd like to thank, first of all of you for being here, because this wouldn't happen without having a whole bunch of nerdy people showing up to something called Nerd Nite. But on top of that, we always, of course, want to thank our lovely hosts and venue and our fabulous friends at Live. Give them a round of applause. And our man Mike is flying solo tonight, so please make sure that you grab another drink, tip your bartender, and have a great time. So, we'd of course also like to thank our three speakers who will be talking about sundry nerdy topics, and you'll hear about those as they come on up here. So, I get to do the Nerd Nite Minute. And before I actually get started on this, let me ask this one question. It is kind of dark, so I can't really see you anyways. However, is there anybody British in the audience? Not you. Okay. Nobody? This is going to go a lot better. Because today, for your Nerd Nite Minute, we're going to talk about why we declared independence from Great Britain. And you probably think it's something like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We hold these truths to be self-evident, all that good, noble stuff. You are wrong. It is because we wanted our own system of units and measurements. So, pop quiz time. What system of weights and measures does the United States use? If you think the answer is, the imperial system, put a fist in the air. If you think it is the English or British system, put your hand in the air. And I kind of spoiled that one. But, okay, we've got some answers on that. It is, in fact, a trick question. We don't use either of them. News to me. We use something called the United States Customary Units, which we established in 1832. If you want to learn more about this, you can download this book as a PDF. It is riveting. Now, the United States customary system is mostly based on the British imperial system that they codified in 1824. But then that becomes the next question, what do our former overlords use? And if you think the answer is called the imperial system, put your fist in the air. And if you think it is the metric system, put your hand in the air. Okay, a little bit more participation in that. Appreciate that. Guess what? Still a trick question. What do the British actually use? Everything. They use imperial units that were established by King George in 1834. They use the Magna Carta system from 1825. They use Roman units. They finally got on board with the French and the metric units that came out of the French Revolution in 1965. And they also still use these 1,000-year-old things called the Winchester standards. Now, how does that actually look? We're going to look at three different possibilities. Number one, how do you measure distance in Britain? Is it a long distance? I hope you like flowcharts. If the answer is yes, then you ask yourself the second question. Are you driving a car or are you going by foot? If the answer is I'm going on foot, well, let's use kilometers and meters for the most part. Cars, miles, and hundreds of yards. But maybe it's not a long distance and it's a short distance. Then you have to ask yourself questions like, am I trying to set up a cricket field? If the answer is no, let's go back to feet and inches, but sometimes meters. But if it is a cricket field, we're going to use feet, chains, and yards. And we're going to measure things in 22 yards, which is one chain. But we're going to make it one chain by 10 feet. How big is the outfield? Who knows? We make that up as we go along. So far, so good, right? But why would we be bothered with something like actually using the right unit measurements? So we're going to have an exit that's in 1.5 meters? Miles. Yes, this is a picture I took when we were in England this past summer. I'm happy to tag along with my lovely partner, Molly, wherever she is. She's somewhere in the back, who got to do a couple conferences and talks in England. I just tagged along and found this ridiculous sign. Now, I don't know. What units? Who knows? Make it up as you go along. 70 miles an hour, 70 kilometers an hour. If you're going 70 kilometers an hour, you're going to get it run over. So far, so good. Let's move on. What about weights? Are you weighing people? And are you also the National Health Service? If you're the National Health Service, you're going to go metric. And we're going to use grams and kilograms. But if not, stones. That's 14 pounds. I am 10 stone, 5 pounds. But maybe we're not measuring people, so we're measuring what? Oh, are we building a ship? Hey, this is Britain after all. We're a naval culture. If you're not building a ship, then you have to ask yourself, what am I actually measuring? Is it small? Maybe related to baking or food? Great British Bake Off fans? Any fans? Fans? Went to Bakewell, had a chart. It was great. Kilograms and grams. But maybe it's big. Tons. Short tons, 2,000 pounds, or metric tons. That's 1,000 kilograms, which means it's 2,200 pounds. But maybe we are making a ship because, after all, we're British. And we're going to use long tons, which are 2,240 pounds. Still with me? Let's do one more. What about liquids? Is it something you drink? If the answer is no, let's go metric. Unless we're talking about car mileage. Then we're talking about miles per gallon. But wait, that's miles per British gallon. That is 160 ounces, not 128. So far, so good? But if it is something I drink, does it contain alcohol? And if it does not contain alcohol, then we ask ourselves, is it milk? If the answer is no, we're back to metric. But if it is milk, we have one more question to ask in the same time. Does it come from a cow? Because if the answer is yes, we're using pints, but these are British pints that are 20 ounces. Incidentally, if you get a pint of beer in England, you get more of it, which means you get drunk faster. Pro tip. If it's not from a cow, that's your soy, that's your almond, that's your oat. We're back to liters. So far, so good. Let's take a look at the alcohol. Yes, we're talking about something alcoholic that we drink. Is it beer, cider, or wine? If it is yes to those questions and it's beer or cider, we're back to pints, but those are still UK pints. If it's wine, and specifically still wine, so not fortified, we're in mils, but they have to be distributed in multiples of 125 and 175 mils. So far, so good, right? But if it's not beer, wine, or cider, we can use milliliters or grams, but if it's fortified, we need to do this in quantities that are multiples of 50 and 70 mils. And if it's distilled spirits, we need to do this in 25 and 35 mils. Everybody good so far? Great. So what does that mean? The next time you're in Britain, go drive a mile to your neighborhood pub, or I guess you could just walk 1,600 meters. You can turn on the television to see if anyone is going to beat the world record 153-meter cricket hit on the pitch that's measured in feet. And you can raise a toast and thank your lucky stars that we declared independence and dodged that bullet, which is incidentally measured in calibers. Or you can have a 125 ml glass of ale. Or wine, sorry, or a 35 ml dram of whiskey. Thank you. And next up, we have Professor of Medicinal Pharmacy talking about drugs. Well, the medical kind. Drugs. Perfect. Drugs. Great segue. We went from alcohol to drugs. Don't mix the two, folks. Emily Scott.
All right. Thank you very much. Wow. That was, I don't know, I'm more confused than ever. But that doesn't take like a whole hell of a lot. So I'm also going to start with a poll. A quick raise of hands. Any of you in the last month who've looked at a head of lettuce or maybe a nice juicy salad and thought, nah, I'm going to go with the fries. Raise your hand. All right, these are the educated people who are thinking about the thing Michigan is famous for right now, right? Cyclosporus. So this is a parasitic infection that is hanging around, lettuce and a lot of our leafy greens. And in Michigan, I think there's now something like 12,000. The first case was here in Michigan. We've got to be proud of something. We have had like 12,000 cases so far, more than 1,000 in Washtenaw County. We are leading the way, right? And you probably know then that the major symptom of this infection is copious watery diarrhea. And if you've read any of the media or listened to any media, you know that they love to use a special adjective that we don't talk about a lot here at Nerd Nite, but it's explosive. Explosive diarrhea. So, you can see why the journalists really like that. But if you've had this, or if you've had a friend who's had this, maybe you know that we actually have a medication that works most of the time pretty well for this. It works for most people. It stops the bugs from basically being able to make their own DNA, and so they can't live in your gut anymore and they die out. Great. So we've got this medication, and works pretty well for most people, but for some people it doesn't work. It works well for you? Oh, allergic reaction. Right here, you're going to love the rest of this talk. So for some people, it works really well, but they get lots of side effects. And guess what the side effects of this drug is? Besides diarrhea. So how do you know you actually cleared the infection, right? Okay, all right. So we have this one drug regimen for this one disease. Okay, we're good, right? No, because all of you folks out here are unique individuals, just like your mother told you, right? You all have the human genome, presumably, but you have different copies of those genes. They're expressed in different ways. You're different heights and body weights and sizes. You have different allergies, and some of you already have a medicine cabinet at home that looks like a small pharmacy. And all of these things affect how you work with any drug that you're given. So one standardized pill or medicine, a bunch of different people, everyone in this room, your mileage will vary. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So it was introduced, I'm Emily Scott, and one of the many things I'm nerdy about is studying the proteins in your body that are responsible for a lot of this variability in how we respond to medications. So we've got this medicine, right? Here, it's actually a combination of two medicines. They have structures like this, and they have names like this. No, don't glaze over and go to sleep on me yet, okay? We'll move on from talking about drugs in this terminology, and we'll actually talk about our medication as a little pill car, okay? So it's going to go on a journey, and the journey, instead of being across the interstate highways, the journey is going to be through our body. So depending on your age, think Magic School Bus, or Inner Space, or Fantastic Voyage. Take your pick. Okay? But if you remember any of those, the trip through the body is way more complicated than you might think at first, right? So the on-ramp is your mouth if you're taking a drug orally, but then it's got to go through your stomach and your gastrointestinal tract and your intestines. Eventually, it would leave your body through the urine or feces. But there's a lot of other side routes that happen. The drug, you hope, leaves your gastrointestinal tract, gets into your bloodstream, and circulates around through your body, right? And so your body system is really more like, Ann Arbor with summer construction. There's lots of detours. You can't get where you're going. There's lots of traffic going on. It's a complicated thing. So, but what you want eventually is for the drug to get wherever it is you need to treat. You've got a sore muscle in your shoulder or whatever. But drugs don't go to the site where they need to work. They go everywhere in your body. They do not have GPS. Okay, so they go everywhere. And this can result in some of the side effects, perhaps, that you experienced, and a lot of the variability. When you buy a new car, or maybe even a used car, I don't know if they do that. When you buy a new car, they have these stickers on the window, right? where the manufacturer of the car has test driven the car, and they've kind of figured out what the average mileage is under a couple of different, situations, city and highway. And the people who developed your drugs did the same thing. They took those drugs, they took a smallish group of people, and they had them test drive that medication, and they figured out, this amount usually works for most people, and that's what they put on the label, and that's what you're going to be taking. Now, are you the average Michigander? No, you are not. And just like the manufacturer will tell you that your mileage may vary depending on how you drive and maintain your car, well, your mileage, the effectiveness of the drug, will vary depending on how you maintain your body, what your genetics are, what your diet is, what your age is, what disease states, and all of those kinds of things. It can be wildly variable. So before we talk a lot about variability between people, let's talk about what's the ideal situation? What do you want to happen with your drug, your medication? So we're going to measure the amount of drug that's in your bloodstream over time. And of course, when you start out, you haven't taken the medication yet, the amount of drug is 0. But then you get prescribed for your medication, and the concentrations in your bloodstream are going to go up and then fall off. They fall off because your body goes, hey, what the heck? There's this foreign compound in here that doesn't belong. We need to get rid of it, send it on the exit ramp out of the body. That's a normal defensive process that we evolved a long time ago. What you want to happen ideally is that the concentration of that drug gets high enough to do whatever it is it's supposed to do effectively, right? But not high enough that you start to have really bad side effects and toxicities. So this region here in between these two concentrations is kind of the pharmacological Goldilocks zone. And we call it the therapeutic window, the range of concentrations in your blood where the drug is effective, but also safe, right? And that's the ideal scenario. But for some people, and for some conditions, the concentration of the drug in your bloodstream gets a lot higher than that. And that's when you start experiencing these side effects, like the extra diarrhea from the medicine on top of the diarrhea from the disease, like nausea and vomiting. For other people and in other situations, the drug never gets up to that effective concentration. It's basically showed up, waved through the window, and left. You might not have, what was the point of having taken the drug anyway? You're still sick. You're making a beeline to Costco. You're doing that emergency toilet paper run, just like we all did at the beginning of the pandemic. You haven't resolved the disease. And the variability in response to drugs that you see here isn't because people are, not taking their medication according to the directions or bad luck or things. It's because our bodies all treat that standardized dose of medication in different ways. So between the on-ramp for your medication and the off-ramp for your medication, a lot of things happen. And some of them are intuitive and others not so much. The first thing that happens is that your body has to absorb the drug. So it's got to get from your gastrointestinal tract into your bloodstream. And once it's in your bloodstream, like we said, it's going to distribute all throughout your body. Those are fairly intuitive things. The thing that's less intuitive is the thing I'm a geek about, and that is this metabolism step. Metabolism is just a fancy word for saying we change the drug into some other form of the drug. And a lot of times our body is doing that to signal that we should get rid of the drug. Maybe we've got our car pill and we've added a trailer onto it, and our body says, every time I see a trailer, we're going on the off-ramp, right? Many times that metabolism process turns the drug off, but later we'll talk about an example where it turns the drug on. And both of those result in variable drug responses. But suffice it to say, you hope that there's a side journey that the medication makes that gets to whatever organ that you needed to treat, right? And you get enough there to be effective, but not too much there to cause side effects. So I said that I'm a nerd about this metabolism part of the process. And so that's where I'm going to focus the rest of my talk and the implications. This metabolism, just changing the drug from one form to another, happens in your liver. And what you have is you have a whole set of proteins in your liver. You can think of them as road or construction workers, and they each work on a different set of drugs. So, you know, this guy might work on drug A, and the blue guy might work on drug B, and they control how fast you get rid of that drug. And different people have different arrangements of these road crew worker proteins in their liver. So for example, we've got Marianne here. Marianne's got a full road crew. Everybody showed up to work. I don't know when that happens, but everybody showed up to work. And so she's going to break down that drug basically as the physician expected that she would, at the normal, average rate, whatever that is. But we have other people like, say, Earl. Earl's road crew is short-staffed. 2 people showed up ready to work. A third guy showed up. He hasn't had his coffee yet. He's really not even functional. He's sort of only half there. And that would be the equivalent if you have a mutation in that road worker in your genes. And so that road crew isn't going to process drugs nearly as quickly. And so that's a slow process. And those drugs then will build up in your bloodstream. We can have the opposite occur, and we've got Wanda here. Wanda's got multiple copies of one of these road workers. They're like working 3 shifts on the express lane or something. And so they're clearing drugs like a bat out of hell, right? And so then maybe the drug never gets up to enough concentration in your blood to do the thing you wanted it to do. And so your genes, your particular set of genes, really are the major controller for the speed limit of drugs through your system. So let's talk about these a little more specifically. So we've got Marianne here. She's given one drug in one particular dosage. And one of these road workers, this one actually is called CYP3A4. I know they have these R2D2-like names, but this is just one of those road workers. And it happens to work on this drug that she's been dosed with. And so we have, she processes it normally. That's all well and good. That's the ideal scenario. But we've got Earl here. Earl has a mutation in this particular road worker, CYP3A4. And so he can have the same medication in the same dose, but it's going to build up in his bloodstream so that it is toxic to him. So this could be just minor toxicity, or it could be basically, goodbye Earl, as the Dixie Chicks said. He deserved it. This is talking about the variation between how different people metabolize or break down or clear a drug, but this also can happen for one person under different conditions. So let's go back to Marianne. This is her normal MO. She takes this drug when she's 20, and this is what happens, and she's on this medication for a long time, and conditions change, and they'll change how she processes this drug. So mutations aren't the only way that these road workers can be defective. There are other situations. You can have one drug that shuts down the body's ability to process the first drug. So drug combinations can be problematic. You could develop liver disease, since these are liver proteins. Your liver's not working very well. You're not clearing drugs very quickly. Again, toxicity. Age, as we get older, we process drugs less and less well. So 50-year-old Marianne is not going to clear drugs the same way as 20-year-old Marianne did, even though the genes haven't changed. And then finally, diet. And I show grapefruit juice here because it is basically a overturned semi-tractor trailer across all lanes of the freeway. No drug is getting out of the system here, okay? And grapefruit juice is something that you might have seen like on your prescription pill bottles, a little sticker that says, do not take with grapefruit juice. And are we really against fruit that badly that we have to label everything? No, it's because of this particular interaction between a compound in grapefruit juice and some medications. So we've got this whole process going on, and I've been talking about metabolism as it turns off or inactivates a drug. But there are some cases where it turns on a drug, and we dose people with what's fairly inactive form of the medication. And this is a famous example. So Codeine, which you may recognize, is a pain reliever, but it's a pretty crappy pain reliever. It doesn't work very well. And what we do is we count on your body, one of these road workers, this time called CYP2D6, to activate that drug into the active form that then deals with your pain. And we hope that that happens in a logical way so that you get enough but not too much of the active form of the drug in your bloodstream. But if this group of people, about 10% of you have some variability in your CYP2D6. So my husband is one of these. It's not that uncommon. And I call him a mutant. He is. Pharmacologists call this being a CYP2D6 poor metabolizer. And that's a real term, not just what I put on the anniversary card. But his drug levels never get up to the effective range. And we had a really good example of this on February. We were down in Houston at my daughter's house. He was up on a ladder trying to help fix something. He fell, he shattered his elbow, had to have surgery, put it all back together. Okay, that wasn't fun, but that part went fine. But when the medication wore off in the middle of the night, they had given him a drug like this that has to be activated by his body. He can't do this. He's a mutant, right? So middle of the night, he wakes me up, horrible, horrible pain. I mean, the man, even on his best days, but, a lot of pain. So we, Michigan Medicine Emergency Room, we tell him what's going on. And, within a few minutes, they've given him a drug that is a pain reliever that his body doesn't have to turn on. And in, 10 minutes, he's like back to a normal human being, or, as normal as his spouse usually is. So this is an example where you have variability in the turning a drug on. And as many of you might know, as we age, we tend to take more and more medications. So we've got these, days of the week pill boxes to sort of keep track of, Monday, Wednesday, Friday are the blue ones and so on. And we can get quite a collection. And these drugs can interact with each other in unfavorable ways. And this is not just for older people. It's actually not that hard to do. So think about somebody who is young, they're on birth control, they have some seasonal allergies, so they're taking something for that. Random day, they get a headache, and then they come out to Nerd Nite and they have a drink and maybe one of those gummies that your cousin said changed their life. You're on 5 different medications and you didn't even think about it, right? So a lot of combinations. And when you have 5 medications, there's 10 different pairs. There's a lot of traffic on the roadway, So this is kind of like, I-23 at rush hour. There's just traffic's flowing, but there's like a lot going on. And what we hope is that those medications are each traveling independently, right? And they are spaced out and they're working and doing their own job independently. But what really happens is that we have problems. We have things like car crashes and tailgating where one medication is really changing how another medication works, either stronger or weaker, both ways. And so this is kind of more like, I don't know, when I accidentally go down Hill Street on move-in day, right? It's not just that the traffic is moving, but oh my gosh, it's just there's all kinds of crap going on. And sometimes this happens when you take one medication and you have a side effect, and then you take another drug to deal with the side effect, and then you take a third drug to deal with the side effects of the second drug, and it gets to be quite a confusing thing. Pretty soon, the medications in your medicine cabinet have like their own little group chat, and the equivalent of like a 10-car pileup can happen, and this can happen very suddenly. And say you go into the emergency room, they may load you up with a few different medications simultaneously to deal with an acute issue. So how can we prevent these 10-car pileups? This is your public service PSA part of the talk. Keep a complete medication list, not just your prescription medications, right? Don't you also take things that are over the counter and drink alcohol and maybe smoke? Those are all drugs as well that interact with the prescription drugs. Bring your medication list to every appointment. not just your general practitioner, because, you know, sometimes the dentist gives you medicine, or the eye doctor, right? Those count too. Ask what the medicine working well should look like. What kinds of symptoms should resolve if you get enough drug in your bloodstream? What kinds of symptoms should you be alert for if you have too much of the drug in your bloodstream? If possible, use one pharmacy. So pharmacists are strange creatures. They really like looking at these kinds of traffic reports, and a big part of their job is not to count, lick, and stick. It is to look out for these potential drug-drug interactions that could be problematic for you. But even so, the pharmacist only knows about your prescription medications. They don't know about what you're doing on the rest of your time, right? And finally, check with your physician before stopping a medication, because just like adding new medications changes the traffic throughout your system, removing a medication also changes the traffic throughout your system in ways that could be problematic. So we've been talking about one standardized dose of medication going through a diverse population where we all process that drug differently. So your mileage will definitely vary. So thank you. That's pretty much all I wanted to share with you tonight. I hope it's been useful and maybe a little bit entertaining. But I will leave you with this one thought, which is preventative medicine is always the best medicine. So stick with the fries for a while longer, okay? I can do questions. Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions as I can. Yes. My husband's a mutant. Did I know that before he went to the ER? Yeah, I did. Because when he had a vasectomy, they also gave him a medication that had to be turned on before it worked. Yeah. One more question. Can hardly see in the dark here. Oh, I see you. Yes. Any particular drug-drug interactions? There are a whole different. There's a whole sets of drugs that are, relatively well known to cause these interactions, and I couldn't even begin to list them. And I almost wouldn't want to, because I don't want you to take medical advice from me. Don't start or stop medications based on anything you've heard here tonight or what your cousin, has done a lot of research, or the TikTok videos. Go to your physician and ask that question about your medications. Thank you very much.
All right, we've reached our first break, so we'll see you guys back here in 10 minutes. That is about, we'll call it 7:47. So grab another refresh on your drinks. Remember, Mike's flying solo, so be nice to him. Tip your bartender. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.
Hello, folks. Meander your way back to your seats. Put a pin in your conversation. Don't worry, there'll be a second break. You can pick off exactly where you left off if you push that mental pause right now. Again, thank you for coming out. I was chatting with Mike behind the bar before Nerd Nite started tonight, and he said, "How is it normally in August?" And I said, "I don't remember, but I don't know. I don't think we're going to get that many tonight." And thank you for proving me wrong. What a wonderful full room of nerds. So glad you're all here, especially because what is cooler and nerdier than space? I don't know, but you know who does and agrees that there isn't anything? It's Jennifer German. Jennifer is a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador to Michigan, a mother of two, software engineering, medical school educated, hopeless space geek. She's a perfect person to talk to us about space. Join me in welcoming Jennifer.
Thank you. All right. I just realized that I have 3 devices and 2 hands. So we'll make it work. We'll make it work. All right, yes, so I am here to talk about NASA's current hype of the Nancy Grace Roman telescope, which is launching at the end of this month, we hope. We always hope with the launch, you never know. So the telescope is indeed named after Dr. Nancy Grace Roman, NASA's first chief of astronomy. And notice, I didn't say first female chief of astronomy. She was the first, male or female. Okay. We're going to make it work. There we go. So, Roman is a survey telescope, which means it's going to observe large portions of the sky. You can see here the field of view of Roman compared to what Webb and Hubble can look at once. Large. And this will let the Roman telescope detect patterns across our universe and not instead of just studying individual objects like the other space telescopes do. Also, we'll be able to survey more of the sky more quickly while maintaining the scientific quality that we need. Yay! All right, so this is a picture of the primary mirror over there being inspected. The primary mirror is 7.9 feet, 2.4 meters, which is almost exactly the same size as Hubble's mirror. And yet, you saw the difference. How does Nancy Grace Roman achieve that difference? So, it has what's called a wide field instrument, WFI, not Wi-Fi. I thought it said Wi-Fi at first. No. This is Roman's science instrument. It's composed of 18 detectors, each one in this, and this is the shape, each one about the size of a post-it note, sticky note. It also has 8 imaging filters and 2 slitless spectroscopic modes. Woo. And so with all of this, it can take that same size mirror and do much more with it. Okay. All right. So, even though the WFI is the main science instrument, Nancy Grace Roman is carrying a technology demonstration also in this new advanced coronagraph. Now, we do have coronagraphs in space already, but this one is super better, and I will explain. So, one way of observing exoplanets is by taking pictures and looking for them directly, right? Now, the problem is that when you get far enough away, you can see that planet disappear just into the light of its star, and we can't see it. If we cover the light of the star, and we'll let the animation run through one more time, then we can see these planets that are either too close to the star that we couldn't see them, or just too dim, giving off their own light. And that's what a coronagraph does. Now, Nancy's coronagraph, hang on, scroll, has a level of sensitivity that is 100 to 1,000 times stronger than the existing space-based coronagraphs. So we expect to find a plethora of colder planets closer to stars than we have already.
Yay. For people who care. Oops, where'd it go? Oh, yeah, there we are. I see. Broad scientific survey. So the one scientific instrument is going to produce 4 different surveys, 3 core community surveys, and we're going to go through each of those, and then 1 general astrophysics survey. So first, the high latitude wide area survey, which basically, see more, bigger, more. So high latitude means that Nancy Grace Roman is going to observe beyond, or rather above and below, the plane of our own galaxy. So here's the plane of our galaxy. It's going to be looking here in this area and here. And then wide area, as you saw in the graphic before, compared to Hubble and Webb and the others, when we say wide area, we mean more. That still, it's only going to be about 12% of the sky. But we consider 12% a wide area when all the other telescopes are only doing 1 to 2%. So, all right, we are expecting a boost in how we understand dark matter. So here's why. Gravitational lensing, pretty well understood phenomenon where large masses bend light from things from our position relatively behind it and as the light goes through. Turns out there's something else called weak lensing, which I just found out about in learning this presentation. So this graphic here, that shows gravitational lensing. We'll go back to the beginning, where the light is bent, so you can see that. And then weak lensing is the second effect. It turns out dark matter exerts a very subtle and yet dramatic effect on the shape of galaxies, plural. And so the only way we can detect it is with a wide field view, which Nancy Grace Roman is going to give us. So we are hoping to be able to not visualize directly dark matter, but visualize the effects of it so we can find out where it is. And then understanding dark energy. So I'm going to be honest here. I did not understand the explanation they gave us when they trained me on this deck. And the video that was here I took out was just pictures of galaxies from Hubble with spectroscopic lines next to them. It didn't make any sense, so I'm not going to pretend that I can explain it. It has something to do with baryon acoustic oscillations. Now, I know what baryons are, right? Subatomic particle made of 3 quarks, held together by a gluon, half integer spin. I can talk about particle physics. But that's the extent of my knowledge on this subject. Okay, and our solar system. So we're still talking about the high latitude Y area survey. Nancy Grace Roman is going to have to look through our solar system in order to see the galaxy. So it's going to find stuff. This is not necessarily a primary science purpose, but we know it's going to happen, so we're going to look for it. And what we are expecting is a whole bunch more trans-Neptunian objects, those really faint things out in the Kuiper belt. We're expecting to find a bunch more of them. Okay, the second survey. Scroll, scroll, scroll. The high latitude time domain survey. So, high latitude, again, above and below the plane of our own galaxy. Time domain has to do, how do things change over time? So what this means is that at some point, the Nancy Grace Roman telescope is going to go back over pieces of the sky that it's already looked at. And it's going to do this again and again over the 3 years, I think, 3 of the 5 years that it will be running. And these red ovals are the 3 targets of this time domain survey. That way, so what that will let us do is see all the things that are going on that change, right, over time. One of the biggest one, of course, is supernovae. But specifically what Nancy Grace Roman is going to be looking for is type 1A supernovae, which we are able to use to help measure and determine the universe's expansion rate. They are so precise. And Roman is estimated to end up finding 20,000 of these special supernovae in the survey. And so they're hoping that we are not only going to be able to determine the acceleration of the expansion of the universe, which right now is under contention. There are two different leading theories, but also find an explanation for the expansion. The time-based survey also is going to be able to find things like stars that change in brightness over time. We said supernovae, but also tidal disruption events, which is what is being shown here in the artist. So basically what happens is a star wandered itself a little too close to a black hole, and that black hole is just ripping it apart and eating it to kind of like slurping it like a straw. I know, right? It's called a tidal disruption event. And so we're hoping to be able to watch one of these as they're happening and not just get a snapshot picture, but be able to go back over and over and see the effects. Okay, third, galactic bulge time domain survey. So again, time domain means we're going to go back and look at it over and over again. In this case, the galactic bulge is the target. And so 6 fields of observation, 5 right in a row, 1 slightly, well, I mean, above is because it's, you know, is it on the right, is it above, is it on the left, whatever. Near. But that is, so this is our galactic bulge of the Milky Way galaxy. And we are going to try and get new information. One of those 6 includes our galactic center. And the reason, so you saw that for everything else, we are not looking at our own galaxy. But the reason we're doing this is because Nancy Grace Roman is near infrared. It can see through the dust that we haven't been able to see through before. And because it's so high sensitivity, like I mentioned before, we are hoping to be able to map the places that historically we just have not been able to see in the center of our own galaxy and actually find out what's there. As I mentioned, more exoplanets. Hang on a second. That's my alarm. You can tell a phone to shut itself up and be silent, but the alarms still go through, so I don't know. So yeah, the galactic bulge is also going to find more exoplanets because there's more solar systems out there. Also, specifically, like I said, getting data on our own galaxy, one of those notches is aimed directly at Sagittarius A asterisk, which is the black hole that is in the center of our galaxy. So we're looking for more information on that also. And just as an aside, this image is actually from the Spitzer telescope. So infrared still, but yes, because of course Nancy Grace Roman hasn't taken any pictures yet. And lastly, the Galactic Plane survey. So the flat region where most of a disc-shaped galaxy's mass is located. We're going to be looking at ours, but we're going to look at the far side. So we're up over here. Actually, we're over here somewhere. So we're going to see. We're going to try to see as far to the other edge of our galaxy as we can. All right, big data. Roman's surveys are going to create huge data sets, and therefore we are hoping to be able to answer big questions in the sense of what are the patterns across our universe, and what are deviations from those patterns that we can see. Because we will have this data, and initial scientists are going to go through and try and put them together into more understandable views. But the raw data will be back there also to be that can be accessed, but just at scale. See what we can discover at scale instead of at individual. As a data comparison, at the end of the 5 years, that primary mission of Nancy Grace Roman, 20,000 terabytes of information should be gathered. Hubble in its first 30 years of operation, did 172 terabytes. So another way of saying this is every month, Roman will collect almost twice as much data as Hubble collected in 30 years. Every month for 5 years. There's a lot of data. Yeah, can we get through the data? That's the question. Roman Research Nexus. So to help us get through the data, it is all being put up in the Roman Research Nexus, which is a cloud space online where scientists are going to have immediate access to all the data. It's not going to be censored. It's not going to be filtered in anything. It's in the cloud. So as long as someone can connect, they can work with it. They don't have to download massive data sets and wait for that delay or have to own the computer and the power to process the data. They're going to be able to do it in the cloud that is being provided. So this is a new attempt to spread the science around the world and to every scientist who wants to be involved. Looking ahead, all right, so launch, August 30th. We're still on track. Things are still a go. Once it's launched, 3 months, there will be a 3-month commissioning period during which the equipment is turned on, tested, calibrated, made sure it's good to go. At the end of that 3 months, Nancy Grace Roman will do the first data gathering, the first look observations. At the end of those 3 months will be released. And I don't know, maybe there'll be a presentation at the library about that. And then after that, their scientific operations begin for the 5-year mission. Now, how do you get a boarding pass up on the Nancy Grace Roman telescope? Well, you do the QC thing here and you fill out the form. So I've got mine. They're very slick. I've added to my collection. Unfortunately, I apologize, this presentation is too late to get your name actually etched on the chip that's on the telescope. They've already finalized it and put it on in preparation for launch. But you can still get your boarding pass. And that's all, but hopefully we have time for questions because it's my favorite part. Sorry. Yes, sir. What is the limiting factor for 5 years? Why is the mission 5 years? And can we extend that limitation to another 5 years? Do we need to refuel? Whatever it is. So how it is that when we design, I say we, I don't design any of these. When NASA designs the technology, it is built to be like, okay, we expect it to be able to do this for this long. Think of this 5-year primary mission as the warranty period. It's going to work for 5 years. We don't promise anything after that. But as you know, except for refrigerators, things always work past the warranty period. So what's the limiting? And so the limiting factor, it very much depends. I don't know specifically Roman's limiting factor, but you have to assume okay, so this is going to answer a different question that nobody asked, but people. We are putting it at L2, which is where Webb is. And so we will not be able to service it. So that is a limiting factor. We can't get to it once it's there. It's too far away. It's not going to be possible. However, part of the reason of using L2 is because it's so, and I know I'm saying this wrong, gravitationally neutral, yes, that it doesn't need a lot of power to stay in its orbit, to stay where it is. And it doesn't need a lot of fuel for that. And in fact, it will be partially solar powered. But we also chose L2 because the instruments can stay cold enough there. They can be right in the place they need to be to last the optimal amount of time. So we have tried to optimize as best we can, knowing we can't go and repair it. Will it crash into Webb? See, this is the one. Okay, I was like, what do you mean it's at L2? Webb's at L2. Turns out Gaia from ESA is at L2 also. And there's the fourth one that I don't remember the name of. L2 is not, okay, it is a point in space, but when we say it's at somewhere, think of it as like when we say it's at Jupiter, it's at Earth, it's orbiting L2. It's not actually at L2. And then in space, of course, three-dimensional orbits, so they're not all in the same plane either, you know. One's doing this, one maybe going the other way. One more? Yay! Anyone? So James Webb was predicted for a 5-year lifespan, and then the launch and injection into orbit around L2 was so precise that it actually still has enough for 15 years. And the question is, can that happen with Nancy Grace Roman too? Yes, it absolutely can. Like I said, NASA is guaranteeing 5 years, and to do that, we put the other stuff there. If we use it, you get 5 years. If we don't use it, we get a lot more. You can talk to me over here.
So we'll see you back here at 8:15. So, you know, you get a little shorter break, but it was worth it to learn about that space, right? All right, folks, make your way back to the seat. Press that conversational pause. Don't worry, the night is young. You can go. Live is closing after Nerd Nite, but you can go out and join the streets and keep your conversation about space and medicine going. And guess what? You also now get to be a word nerd, which is my brand of nerd. So I'm extra super excited to welcome Sarah Basuni. Sarah is a PhD candidate studying an infectious disease. Oh, God, I hate this word. Sarah. Epidemiology. I can repeat it. It's just not in this brain initially. Ready? I'm going to do it again. Sarah is a PhD candidate studying infectious disease All right, we're moving on. Sarah, outside of school, enjoys trivia, stationery, gardening, attending crossword tournaments with her spouse, and spending time with their beloved cats. She's here to talk to us about words and blockbusting. Join me in welcoming Sarah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Emily, for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, my dad was like, why did you do epidemiology? Why didn't you do something else? But we're here. And tonight, we're not going to talk about epidemiology. Shout out cyclosporiasis. We'll talk later. But tonight, we're going to talk about how the heck is the video rental store from my childhood connected to World War II. So tonight's plot summary is kind of a classic 5-act situation. We're going to start off asking, how did we even get to this question? Then we're going to define what's a blockbuster. Then you're going to say, well, cool, Sarah, but what is a blockbuster? And then we're going to be like, awesome, got that. But like, seriously, what is a blockbuster? And then by the end, you're going to be like, oh, thank God, we got it. That's a blockbuster. So first off, how did we get here? Also, I sometimes talk kind of fast, so buckle in, we're going. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I love trivia in all forms. As a kid, big fan of Jeopardy. I read dictionaries and encyclopedias. I played Trivial Pursuit, by which I mean I read the cards. I didn't do anything else. I just would pick up the cards and read them. And I loved it. I just love learning new things. And to this day, I still scratch the trivia itch among a multitude of ways. One is I have one of those tear-off daily desk calendars. Of course, mine is the Jeopardy version. I met my spouse at bar trivia, and I do this thing called Learned League, which is a quiz league that 4 times a year, for 1 month, for every weekday, you get a set of trivia questions emailed to you. You are then pitted against other trivia nerds, and it's kind of like fantasy football, but for us. And so back in March, the reason we're even here at this Nerd Nite is because I got this question. And the question is, what term was coined for high-capacity bombs used in World War II by the British Royal Air Force that were powerful enough to destroy a particularly large area of land and was shortly thereafter adopted by Hollywood publicists and journalists as a metaphor for certain film productions and remains in common use today? So I was like, okay, I think I can deduce what this answer is. I didn't realize that might have been the trajectory, but like, okay, interesting. Throw my answer in. A couple days later, I'm talking to my spouse about trivia, as one does. And as I was describing this question to him, he was like, oh, like, you mean like the video rental store? And I was like, no, of course not. Oh, wait, maybe? And then I went down this deep trivia rabbit hole. And so you all get to come along kind of on that journey with me. So I won't tell you what the answer is. You might be able to guess, but we're not going to get there just yet. We need a grand finale. So what is a blockbuster, Sarah? So blockbuster, for anyone who's not familiar, refers in part to a video rental store. It was founded in 1985. In 2010, it declared bankruptcy. And in 2014, the last 300 corporate-owned stores were closed. I know, yes. We'll get to that. So for anyone who didn't experience a blockbuster or video rental store firsthand, let me paint you a brief picture. So it was a place that you would walk into, and especially in the 80s and 90s, like our lovely public libraries and other types of public institutions didn't necessarily have ways in which you could check out videos, VHS, for a while. And so Blockbuster filled that niche. You could walk in, you'd be met with a plethora of videos of all types of genres, new releases, classics, everything in between. And especially for those of us who came of age in the 80s and or 90s, some of us have really warm memories of going in with our parents or caregivers, and they'd be like, okay, each of you little kids, you get to choose a video, you get to choose a video, and like for the next week or two, that would be kind of your movie night. And so it was really exciting. You didn't always know what would be available. And it has this really fun memory for a lot of us. In particular, one of my still favorite movies, shout out Sneakers. Oh my God, okay. I wasn't sure, I was like, maybe it's too niche. It's not. So Sneakers, my sister checked out from Blockbuster when I was a kid. We watched it, I fell in love with it. I still reference it to it this day. So thank you to my sister, thank you to Blockbuster for this opportunity. And if you were like, damn, Sarah, that was such a beautiful picture you painted. I wish I had been in a Blockbuster. So while the 300 corporate-owned stores have closed, there remains one lone Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. Woo! So there was a documentary in 2020 talking about it. I personally have not been, but I know a couple people who have. So apparently that's a thing you can do. So have fun on your Oregon road trip. So all that to say, Blockbuster has this, deep-seated nostalgia and was this cultural touchstone for a lot of folks. But like many wonderful things, so Blockbuster had its inception, its rise, a peak, and then a tragic fall. And that tragic fall has created this very I think it's becoming more of a classic case study in business and financial circles. And it is this cautionary tale of like, if you don't adapt, you're gonna die. You're gonna die, and like, that's it. There's nothing else you can do here. And so I'm in public health mainly, and I've done biomedical research. So my search engine of choice is usually PubMed. So I was like, okay, cool. Blockbuster is described as this tragic case study in business and finance. Is it in PubMed? And I was like, nah, nobody's going to be mentioning Blockbuster in the biomedical peer-reviewed literature. And joke's on me, because there is, in fact, at least one article published in 2011 titled Hospice Care, Medical Torture, and Blockbuster Video, which, by the way, super catchy title. And so this is a peer-reviewed article talking about the palliative care industry in Southern California. And the author uses Blockbuster as a cautionary tale for the palliative care industry in Southern California to be like, if you don't adapt, you're going to not be viable anymore. In fact, the risk of mistaking process for competency is to end up like Blockbuster Video. Once viable, now a relic, superseded by companies like Netflix. So like quite brutal, but also not wrong. And so it's one of those things where Blockbuster is this example that is used both as a really cool thing, but also as this cautionary tale. All that to say, so Blockbuster, or I guess nostalgia. Nostalgia is really hard to get rid of. And so you still see, like, even this year, last year, questions around, like, is Blockbuster coming back? Is it going to be here? Both in the US, the top one is from San Diego. The second one is from the UK. And on internet fora, you'll get common questions. These are just from the last few months of like, please bring Blockbuster back, please, I miss you. And whether Blockbuster should be brought back is a topic for a different Nerd Night, I would argue. But all that to say, that is one Blockbuster. So now we have the video rental store. Put that in your brain box. Now we're going to take a slight side quest to another type of Blockbuster. So Blockbuster can also be used in the context of blockbusting. So this is a different topic. It's a lot heavier. But as I was doing my own trivia journey through this, I came across this and learned more about blockbusting, and I think it would be remiss if I did not give you a little bit of a nugget around it. So blockbusting was a practice in the mainly like 1940s to the 1960s in the United States, and it was a practice of buying houses on the cheap from white families and then turning around and selling it to black families at jacked up prices. And how did we do this terrible thing? Why, of course, we used racist stereotypes and fear-mongering. And this is one of those things where not one Nerd Night would do this justice, not multiple dissertations would do this justice. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of nuance on why this was happening. But I just wanted to share that as another term for blockbuster. And this is one of those things I also wanted to relate is not like a way over there problem. This wasn't just happening in like the Chicago or the Los Angeles. This was something that was happening within Southeast Michigan. And shout out to the Ann Arbor archives, or the AADL archives. So this is a news article from 1976 where, under the umbrella of various types of discriminatory and exclusionary housing practices, they specifically call out blockbusting. So by some unscrupulous real estate agents who steered whites away from a neighborhood when a black family moved in. And so this is one more way that you might encounter the word blockbuster in your journey and your travels down the trivia rabbit hole. As with many things that were racist and bigoted and quite terrible, you had people contemporaneously who were fighting back and using everything in their toolbox to push back against it. So there were organizations like the Philadelphia Freedom Commission who were pushing back against blockbusting and other discriminatory housing practices. You had people individually protesting. These were protesters in Seattle outside of the realtor office protesting realtor discrimination. And you had thousands of people showing up at protests and rallies and all types of activism. And their tireless efforts culminated in the Fair Housing Act in 1968. So this landmark piece of civil rights legislation that, at least on paper, protects people from discrimination when they are looking for housing. And as with many types of injustice, there is this long hand from history reaching out and tapping us on the shoulder to this day. I also want to shout out a previous Nerd Nite from earlier this year. If you haven't seen it, strongly recommend. Justin Schell of the Justice Indeed Project, which is a local nonprofit, talked about, oh, is that clapping? Woo, let's go. So part of their goal is to identify racially restrictive covenants here in Washtenaw County, in Ann Arbor, identify them, archive them, document them, and repeal them. So you should learn more. It's a really important chapter in our history. And while the racially restrictive covenants aren't directly tied to blockbusting, they're under that larger umbrella of those discriminatory housing practices. So I want to shout that out. Okay, so we've got video rental store. We've got terrible housing discrimination. Okay. Cool, Sarah, but seriously, what's a blockbuster? So let's talk. Let's just think about the history of the word. So let's use this lovely graph from Google Books. So on the y-axis is the frequency of a word. So Google Books scans digitized documents and just trawls through it. And on the x-axis is time. And so I searched blockbuster, hyphenated and unhyphenated. And as you can see, there's not much mention of it until right around 1940. What was happening in 1940, you may ask? And then you might be like, well, she said it in her title, but let's just play along. So World War II was happening. And part of the history of the word blockbuster is that the Royal Air Force in Britain wanted, as many militaries try to do, to maximize firepower, maximize destruction against their enemies. And what they did was they devised a high-capacity bomb called a blockbuster bomb, also called a cookie bomb. And I was like, no. So yeah, we're gonna stick with blockbuster. So this is a diagram, and the main takeaway is that previous other types of bombs, like medium and low capacity, the casing, so the wall of the container of the bomb, takes up more space. So blockbusters, the casing was thinner, which meant that you could shove more munitions in the center. And so it would have a high capacity of munitions inside of it. In addition, these things were big. The first ones in the 1940, it was 1940 and 1941 when they were being developed and then put into the field, were 4,000 pounds. And by the end of the war they were over 12,000 pounds consistently. And to give a bit of scale, so this is a plane dropping two types of bombs. The one on the right is a blockbuster bomb. So it's quite large compared to the other ones. And the other ones are incendiary devices. And so part of the way a blockbuster bomb would be used was that it would be dropped with the goal to kind of blow the top off a building, and then the other munitions would fall in. So if they were incendiary, they'd set it on fire, wreaking a lot of damage and destruction. And part of the reason the name is called blockbuster is because it metaphorically can level a city block. Actually, whether it did or not is up for discussion, but this idea that it was so powerful and so destructive. So that's blockbuster in military parlance. But how did we get to film? How does it connect? So in 1943, this movie, Bombardier, came out. It was a military propaganda film. And this is the first time in the literature where you get this linking between military use of the word blockbuster and it appearing in film or related to film. And as you can see up here, it was described as a blockbuster of thrill and action. And so that's when you start to see, so you saw the beginning, right? The inception of the word blockbuster when it comes out in World War II. It continues to be used a little bit in the film industry throughout, especially the 1960s. But it is often used in a more retrospective sense, as in that film was a blockbuster at the box office. And it's usually used in the sense of, oh, it like blew away the competition financially. It brought in a lot of money, it sold a lot of tickets. And it wasn't really used prospectively, like, oh, that is a blockbuster, or it will be a blockbuster. And it's not necessarily used in conjunction with like critical acclaim. It's really down to, did it sell a lot of tickets? And it kind of aligns with a lot of these like golden era Hollywood of like, you know, the big biblical epics and things like that. Oh yeah, that's what that era was for. So then you see a bit of an inflection point around 1975. And you might be like, well, Sarah, cool. What was happening in 1975? And for any eagle-eyed viewers, I heard, okay, amazing, amazing. For any eagle-eyed viewers, that tear-off calendar in April gives you a bit of a hint for anyone who hasn't guessed it yet. Spielberg demanded to shoot this movie in the Atlantic instead of a studio, and he later said, I was naive about the ocean, which I was like, oh, that's adorable. Okay, so yes, so 1975, you have Jaws. So Jaws comes out as a movie, and that's like a big deal in the history of this word, among other reasons. And so at the time, like this is a quote from a review in the Boston Globe, where it's described as, Jaws is going to be the summer blockbuster. And again, shout out AADL Archives, because I could find this article from Michigan Daily in 1975. And the former manager of the State Theater called it a blockbuster picture. It is doing better than The Sting, which at that point had ran for 13 weeks, and Jaws had been out for less than a month at this point. And he's like, this has set a record. No movie has come even close to it. And he describes how these lines stretch around the block, not just on weekends, but also on weeknights. And this is a picture from outside the State Theater of people lining up to watch Jaws just a few weeks after it had come out. So you can see it was super popular, super commercially successful. I was like, I wonder if anyone knows anyone in this picture. But and so it's like, cool, but like, I was like, so what? Like, The Godfather had come out, Love Story had come out, these other like critically acclaimed movies had already come out. So why was Jaws tied so tightly to the word blockbuster? So this book, Blockbuster by Tom Schoen, dissects a bit of why that is. Not a bit, it's like this big, he does a lot. And he says Jaws was nothing short of revolutionary. You could have finger steepling and scary rubber sharks in the same movie. And by this, he was meaning that previously, you would have movies that would have like this kind of high drama, right? Very Shakespearean, a lot of tension. You would have movies that were very comedic, a bit of slapstick sometimes. You'd have movies that were like lowbrow action. And it was very rare that you had movies that had major components with each, and it was even more rare for movies to have that and be commercially successful. And Jaws had all of those. You had these really intense Shakespearean moments, you had a bit of slapstick comedy, like quips and things that were funny, and you had like scary rubber sharks, so like just straight up action, just like, we're gonna see what happens. And so that was the first time you see it and with just topping the box office for weeks on end. And so Jaws kind of opens the floodgates to the golden age of the blockbuster. So you get all of these movies throughout the late 70s, early 80s, into the 90s. Hopefully these are some of your favorites or ones that you have these like wonderful memories with. And we use that word blockbuster to this day for movies that have a combination often of critical acclaim, commercial success, dramatic moments, comedic moments, action, and including ones that have just come out this year or last year. And so we're almost there, right? We've almost gotten all the way around the circle. So we've talked about the video rental store. We've talked about discriminatory housing practices that were in part a result of World War II. We've talked about the movie itself and the bomb and how that relates. So now we're almost there. We're getting there. So if we look again, we had these inflection points, right? We had like the beginning of the word blockbuster, 1940. We talked about Jaws, 1975. But then blockbuster as a word really takes off right around here. And if anyone remembers when Blockbuster, the video rental store, started, it was 1985. And now it kind of makes a lot more sense. I was like, of course, if I were like naming a video rental store in 1985, 10 years after Jaws, when we've had Star Wars and Alien and all of these phenomenal blockbuster films, I would want to name my store after something that is top of the charts, exciting, cutting edge. And so now, I think, collectively, we can all shout out what the answer is. That's a Blockbuster. So thank you all. That's a Blockbuster. You all know this like backwards and forwards. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. If you want to read through an annotated bibliography, you can also do that if you scan the QR code. With that, please support your local library, and thank you all.
And once again, that is your game code. Incidentally, Sarah, we need to talk about Marty and Cosmo at some point in time. And who else is a sneakers fan here? Thank you, in the back. Appreciate it. Thank you. And once again, give a hand to all three of our speakers, Emily, Jennifer, and Sarah. And of course, we'd like to give our thanks to Live for hosting us yet again, Mike for flying solo and filling up our glasses and lubricating our evening. We are back on Thursday, September 10th for more nerdiness and more nerd talks and more Nerd Nite minutes. So we'll see you back here on September 10th. If you are able and willing to help out, if you want to grab your chair, fold it up, and pull it upstairs for us, we'd always appreciate the help. Please don't feel obligated to, but if you feel like it and you want to get some leg day in, we always appreciate it. And again, thank you for coming, and thank you for supporting your Ann Arbor District Library.